If you've been collecting Social Security for any amount of time, or even if you're still a few years away from claiming, what I'm about to share with you today could directly change how much money lands in your bank account, and when. We're talking about a potential increase of up to $1,000, not a rumor, not clickbait. This is tied to real legislative moves happening right now in Washington, and most people collecting benefits have absolutely no idea it's coming. So if you're someone who depends on Social Security, or someone who's been told their benefit was reduced, or maybe you worked in a public sector job and got penalized for it, stay with me, because this video was made specifically for you. Let's start with something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. For decades, there have been two provisions buried inside Social Security law that have quietly been cutting benefits for millions of Americans. These aren't glitches. They were written into law on purpose. And for over 40 years, retirees have been fighting to get rid of them. One of them is called the windfall elimination provision. The other is the government pension offset. Now those sound complicated, but I'm going to break both of them down in plain English in just a moment, because understanding them is the key to understanding why your benefit could be going up by hundreds or even close to $1,000 a month. But first, here's what makes this moment different from all the other times people have hoped for change. Something actually happened. Congress passed legislation. It's called the Social Security Fairness Act, and it was signed into law. This isn't a proposal sitting in a committee somewhere collecting dust. It's done. It passed. And the Social Security Administration is now in the process of figuring out exactly how to implement it and get the money out to the people who are owed it. So the question on everyone's mind right now is, when do the payments start? And how much are we actually talking about? We're going to get into all of that. But let me first make sure you understand who this applies to, because if it applies to you and you don't know it, you could be leaving serious money on the table. Here's something that might surprise you. If you spent any part of your working life as a teacher, a firefighter, a police officer, a postal worker, a federal employee, or any kind of state or local government worker, and you had a pension from that job, there's a very good chance you were hit by one or both of these provisions. Millions of people were, and many of them never fully understood why their Social Security check was so much smaller than they expected it to be. Let me tell you about a situation that plays out all the time. Imagine someone, let's call her Carol. Carol spent 25 years teaching elementary school. She paid into her state teacher's pension the whole time. Then before that, she worked in the private sector for 15 years and paid into Social Security. She figured when she retired, she'd get her teacher's pension plus her Social Security benefit. Sounds reasonable, right? She earned both. She paid into both. But when she went to claim Social Security, something felt wrong. The number was far lower than she expected. She called the Social Security office. They told her about the windfall elimination provision. Because she also received a pension from a job where she didn't pay into Social Security, her teaching job, the government reduced her Social Security benefit. In some cases, it can cut your benefit by more than $500 a month. Carol was devastated. She'd done everything right. She'd worked hard. She'd planned. And still, she got less than she deserved. Now here's the part that makes people angry. The original justification for that rule was that the Social Security benefit formula is designed to replace a higher percentage of income for lower earners. The government assumed that if you had a pension from a non-covered job, you must not have paid much into Social Security, so they treated you like a low earner even when you weren't. The result? A benefit reduction that felt deeply unfair to millions of workers who had genuinely earned their Social Security through years of private sector work. And then there's the other provision, the government pension offset. This one hits surviving spouses and spousal benefits especially hard. If you receive a government pension and you try to claim spousal benefits or survivor benefits through your husband or wife's Social Security record, the government pension offset can reduce those benefits by 2/3 of your pension amount. In many cases, it wipes out the spousal or survivor benefit entirely, completely, down to zero. Think about what that means for a widow who spent her career working for a city or county government. She's already lost her husband. She's already adjusting to a fixed income, and then she finds out she gets nothing from his Social Security record because of a provision she may have never even heard of. That's the reality that millions of Americans have been living with for decades. And now, for the first time since these rules were created, that's changing. The Social Security Fairness Act repeals both of these provisions, not reduces them, not phases them out slowly over 10 years, repeals them. Once the implementation is complete, the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset will no longer reduce anyone's Social Security benefit. And for people who have already been receiving reduced benefits, retroactive payments are on the table going back to the beginning of this year. Let me say that again because it matters. Retroactive payments. That means people who were already collecting a reduced benefit may be entitled to a lump sum covering the months they should have been receiving more but weren't. Depending on how large your reduction was and how long you've been collecting, that lump sum could be significant. For some people, we're talking several $1,000s in back pay on top of a higher monthly payment going forward. Now, I want to be honest with you here, because this is where things get a little complicated. The Social Security Administration is a massive agency. They have tens of millions of beneficiaries. Implementing a change this large, recalculating benefits, identifying who is affected, processing back payments, takes time. The SSA has acknowledged that. They've been working on the implementation since the law passed, but they've also warned that it will not happen overnight. As of the most current information available, the SSA has been sending notices to people who may be affected. If you think you might qualify, one of the most important things you can do right now is make sure your contact information, your mailing address, your phone number, is up to date with Social Security, because if they're trying to reach you and they can't, you could experience delays in getting what you're owed. You can update your information at ssa.gov, or you can call Social Security directly at 1-800-772-1213. I'd also strongly encourage you to create or log into your My Social Security account online if you haven't already. That's the portal at ssa.gov, where you can see your benefit information, check your earnings record, and eventually see any changes to your payment amount. It's the most direct window into your own account. Here's another thing most people don't realize. The people who tend to lose out in situations like this are the ones who wait for someone else to take care of it. The SSA will be processing these changes on their own timeline, but being proactive, making sure they have your current information, keeping an eye on your account, and knowing what your benefit should be, puts you in a much better position than just hoping for the best. If you're finding this information helpful and you want to stay up to date on everything happening with Social Security, Medicare, and the laws that affect your benefits, this is exactly what this channel is for. Hit that like button right now and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything. We cover this stuff consistently, and in a world where these laws can change with very little warning, staying informed is one of the most valuable things you can do for your financial security. Now let's talk about the actual numbers, because I know that's what you really want to understand. The impact of the repeal varies significantly from person to person. It depends on how large your government pension is, how many years you worked in Social Security-covered employment, and what your earnings record looks like. But here's a general picture to help you understand the scale we're talking about. Under the windfall elimination provision, some people had their Social Security benefit reduced by as much as $587 per month. That was the maximum reduction allowed under the formula. With that provision gone, those people could see their monthly benefit go up by close to that full amount. And when you factor in any spousal or survivor benefit restoration from the government pension offset repeal, some households are looking at combined increases that approach or exceed $1,000 per month. For someone living on a fixed income, an extra $500, $700, or $1,000 a month is not a small thing. That's a car payment. That's a utility bill and groceries. That's the difference between feeling financially secure and feeling like you're constantly running short. For widows and surviving spouses who had their survivor benefit zeroed out by the government pension offset, getting that benefit restored could be genuinely life-changing. And here's something that concerns me, and I want you to hear this clearly. There are people out there right now who are affected by this change and don't know it. Maybe they're in their 70s or 80s, they've been receiving a reduced benefit for years, they accepted it, they adjusted their budget around it, and nobody ever told them that things were going to change. Those are the people I worry about most, because if they don't know to expect a change, they might not notice if something goes wrong, or if there's a delay, or if the SSA needs additional information from them to process the adjustment. If you have a parent, a sibling, a neighbor, a friend, anyone who worked in public service and is on Social Security, please share this video with them. The information is too important to stay within the people who already knew to look for it. Now let's talk about who this does not apply to, because I don't want anyone getting their hopes up unfairly. If you've worked your entire career in Social Security-covered employment, meaning you always paid the Social Security payroll tax, and you don't have any pension from a government job that was exempt from Social Security, then the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset probably never affected you in the first place. Your benefit wasn't reduced under those rules, so there's nothing to restore. This is specifically about people who had a pension from employment that was not covered by Social Security. That includes many teachers, many firefighters and police officers, many federal employees who were under older pension systems, and various state and local government workers depending on where they worked. Not every government job was exempt from Social Security. It varied by state and by time period, but if you're not sure, it's absolutely worth checking. One way to find out is to look at your Social Security statement. If your benefit was being reduced due to these provisions, it would have been noted. You can access that statement through your My Social Security account at ssa.gov. If you see any language about the windfall elimination provision or the government pension offset on your statement, that's a clear sign this law change applies to you. Now, I want to address something that's been causing a lot of confusion and frankly some frustration for people who are waiting on their adjusted payments. The SSA said implementation would take time, and they weren't kidding. A change of this magnitude requires them to go through individual records, verify pension information, recalculate benefit amounts, and then process payments for potentially 3 million or more affected beneficiaries. That's an enormous logistical operation. What that means for you practically is this: do not panic if your benefit hasn't changed yet. The process is underway. The law is real. The money is coming. But the timeline isn't going to be the same for everyone. Some people may see their adjusted payment and their retroactive lump sum relatively quickly. Others might wait longer depending on the complexity of their individual situation and how the SSA prioritizes its caseload. What you should do in the meantime is stay informed, keep checking your account, and make sure you haven't missed any correspondence from Social Security. If you receive a letter from the SSA, even if it looks routine, read it carefully. During a transition like this, those letters may contain important information about your specific case. Here's something else worth knowing. If you believe you're affected and you haven't heard anything after a reasonable amount of time, you have every right to contact Social Security directly and ask about the status of your case. You can call them, you can visit a local Social Security office, or you can reach out through your online account. You are entitled to know what's happening with your benefit. Don't be afraid to ask. There's also been a lot of chatter online and on social media about this law. Some of it accurate, some of it not. I've seen claims that everyone's Social Security is going up by $1,000. That's not true. The increase only applies to people who were previously subject to these two specific provisions. I've also seen claims that the law hasn't actually been implemented yet and might get reversed. Also, not accurate. The law passed. It was signed. It's in effect. The only thing that's still in process is the administrative work of getting the correct payments out to the right people. I tell you this not to confuse you, but because in today's world, misinformation spreads fast, especially around topics like Social Security, where people are anxious about their money and their future. The best protection against misinformation is accurate information, which is why I want you to come to places like this channel rather than relying on a Facebook post or a YouTube comment. Let me also take a moment to talk about something related, because if your Social Security benefit is going up, it can affect other things in your financial picture, and you want to be prepared. If your income increases, it could potentially affect your Medicare premiums. Higher income beneficiaries pay more for Medicare Part B and Part D through what's called the Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, or IRMA. Now, for most people affected by this law, the benefit increase alone won't push them into a higher IRMA bracket, but it's something to be aware of, especially if you're already close to one of those income thresholds. If you have a financial advisor or a Medicare counselor, it might be worth a conversation just to make sure you're not caught off guard. Similarly, if you receive any income-based benefits, Medicaid, certain housing assistance, or other programs tied to income, a change in your Social Security payment could theoretically affect your eligibility or the amount you receive from those programs. It's always smart to understand the full picture of how changes in one benefit can ripple through others. For most people, the math will still be strongly in their favor. Getting several $100s more per month in Social Security will far outweigh any adjustments to other programs. But I believe in being fully informed, and I want you to have the complete picture, not just the exciting headline. Now here's something I think is really important to sit with for a moment. This law passed after decades of advocacy. Retired teachers and firefighters and government workers had been fighting this fight for 40 years. They wrote letters. They called their representatives. They showed up. And it finally happened. That matters, not just for the people directly affected, but because it demonstrates that change is possible, that the system is not completely fixed and immovable, and that staying engaged with what's happening in Washington is genuinely worth your time. Because here's the reality. Social Security is not a static program. It changes. The rules change. The payment calculations change. The eligibility rules get updated. New laws pass. Old rules get repealed. If you tune out and assume that whatever benefit you're receiving now is just what it's going to be forever, you may be missing opportunities or missing threats. There are other proposals circulating right now about Social Security, some that could expand benefits, and some that, frankly, could put the program under pressure. I'm going to be covering those in upcoming videos because you deserve to know what's being discussed before it becomes law, not after. That's the only way to stay ahead of it. So let me bring this home for you with a clear, practical summary of what you should take away from today. If you worked in a government job with a pension and had your Social Security reduced by the windfall elimination provision or the government pension offset, the Social Security Fairness Act has repealed those reductions. Your benefit should increase, and you may be entitled to retroactive back pay going back to January of this year. The SSA is actively working on implementation, but it takes time. Make sure your contact information is current with Social Security. Log into your My Social Security account at ssa.gov and keep an eye on your benefits statement. And don't hesitate to contact Social Security if you have questions or want to check on the status of your case. If you're not sure whether you were affected, check your Social Security statement for any mention of these provisions. If you see them, you likely qualify for an increase. If you know someone, a retired teacher, a former government worker, an elderly neighbor, who may not know about this change, please share this with them. The people who need this information the most are often the ones least likely to be watching videos like this one. And if this kind of information matters to you, if knowing about changes to Social Security, Medicare, and your benefits before they hit your mailbox is valuable, then subscribe to this channel right now. This is what we do here, every week, so you're never caught off guard, never left wondering why your check changed, and never left without the information you need to protect what you've earned. You worked for these benefits. You paid into this system for decades. You deserve to receive every single dollar you're owed. Don't let lack of information stand between you and what's rightfully yours. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll be right here making sure you have everything you need to do exactly that.